Hey, it's your main man, Professor J. Pillar Bay wins Sagittarius season. Say my pop's birthday, happy birthday, pops. And my nephew, Mari, happy birthday. And my auntie Eula. But let's get to the history lesson because pops always told me to keep teaching, right? That's what he said. Let's go to right here. It says, we learn from the same monuments that the women of Moreau, Maru were frequently armed and appeared to live on equal terms with the man. They are constantly portrayed as queens. The Empire of Meru had its settled constitution and its laws. It was composed of many little states, but the whole were apparently governed by a priest caste, and portraits of priests, frequently repeated upon the monuments, showed them as tall and slender, with handsome profile, red brown in color, and with hair indifferently straight or curled. The general population are believed to have been of the black and straight haired Nubian race. Here is the conclusion drawn by a competent German critic nearly 100 years ago from the discoveries made by Gao, Champollion, and others. In Nubia and Ethiopia, stupendous, numerous primeval monuments proclaim so loudly a civilization contemporary to a earlier than. So he's saying in, in Africa, right? But this is the book we read, A Tropical Dependency by Lady Lugar, right? So let's say he's saying Nubia and Ethiopia. All right, one second. Of that of Egypt, that it may be conjectured with the greatest confidence that the arts, sciences, religion descended from Nubia to the lower country of Mizraim. The civilization descended the Nile, built Memphis, and finally, something later, wrestled by the colonization, the delta from the sea. The monuments, right here, though eloquent, are not the only grounds upon which this conclusion has been reached. The fame of the Ethiopians was widespread in ancient history. Herodotus describes them as the tallest and the most beautiful and long lived of the human race. And before Herodotus, Homer, in even more flattering language, describes them as the most just of man, the favorite of the gods. The annuals of all the early of the great early nations of Asia Minor are full of them. The Mosaic records allude to them frequently, but while they are described as the most powerful, most just, and most beautiful of the human race, they are constantly spoken of as black. And there seems to be no other conclusion to be drawn that at the remote, the most ancient period of history, the leading race of the Western world was a black race. When we reflect that this black race flourished within the very latitudes of Africa, which European nations are now engaged in opening to modern civilization, a great interest is added to the study of their possible descendants, right? Talking about us, right? Because we are global people. So let's just break this quote down. Even though the other stuff was hot, I love that. Like she said, like this lady, she just studying. She really ain't for us. She just studying the history, right? But let's just read this again. It says right here, the fame of the Ethiopians, the fame of us so-called black people, right, was widespread. It's global in ancient time, ancient history. Herodotus described us as the tallest and most beautiful and long-lived of the human race. And so they said we was the tallest, most beautiful, longer of the human race, right? And he said even before Herodotus, who was Herodotus and Homer? These are some of Europe, if not their first writers, right? In even more flattering. This lady is European, right? She just tell me what you found. She said Homer, in even more flattering language, described us as the most just of man and the favorite of the gods. Now, somewhere along during slavery, we forgot this stuff, right? During slavery and mental colonization, we forgot we were the favorite of the gods. We were the most just of man. She says the annuals of all the great early nations of Asia Minor are full of us so-called black people. The Mosaic records allude to us frequently, but while we are described as the most powerful, the most just, and the most beautiful of the human race, they are constantly spoken of us as black, and there seems to be no other conclusion than in ancient history, the people, the leading race of the Western world was us, a black race. And she like, it's crazy to believe that because now we got them colonizers. She said, when we reflect that this black race flourished within the very latitudes of Africa, which European nations are now engaged in opening to modern civilization. Now that modern, there's no such thing when you're colonized and now everything's modern. A great interest is added to the study of their possible descendants. Who is what? Us. She's like, hey, these people were so cold. How the hell we catch them? These people have wrote so much about all the stuff that we did. How do they catch? Man, let's study these people. So I just wanted to show you that way when you ever forget, when people tell you history started with slavery, how could it start with slavery when you are, in ancient times, you were described as the most beautiful and long of the human race, the most just of man and the favorite of the gods. And they got all the annuals, all the books, all the written stuff of the early nations of Asia Minor, Asia, right, are full of us. And then she said, while they speak of us as the most powerful, the most just, the most beautiful, they say, hey, it's them black folks. They was the Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali of ancient times, the Venus and Serena Williams, the Beyonce. We was already doing this. All right. So as the light goes out, and you're thinking about us, hey, get this book in your library, A Tropical Dependency. All right, and you see what they say. And hold on, right? And like she said, the queens were black, right? But look, she said here a conclusion is drawn by a competent German critic nearly 100 years ago from the discoveries made by Gao, Champollion, and others. In Nubia, in Ethiopia, stupendous, numerous primeval monuments proclaim so loudly a civilization contemporary to Egypt. We've been doing this. If we did that over there, what you think we did over here in America? All right, this your main man, J. Pillar Bay, Professor J. Pillar Bay, still reaching and teaching. Love y'all. And shout out to all those who keeping it real no matter what color your skin is. A brother appreciates that. So keep reaching and teaching and get your library up. One. Not my fault. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.